So Max has gone ahead and made an hour-long breakdown about the insanity that is Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. Hi, I'm Tyler. Let's watch what he has to say because I am ready to listen in the Church of Maximilian.
Twitter is saying over 100 hours of gameplay. Oh man, hang on a second. All right. There's so much more information to go over. Let's begin that now.
Because as of right now, it makes sense because I'm sure the average the average gameplay alone was 40 odd hours for remake plus anything you want to do to complete the game. So to 100% the other game could be a little bit more, but for 100 hours is including you at least trying everything at least once, including the mini games and so on and so forth. But with how much more story this game is going to cover, we don't know when the cutoff point is going to be, because it was clear in the remake the cutoff point was when you left Midgard. But from the moment you get to the open world to X scene, it's hard to say where it's going to end. Because it shows that one of the climactic endings is going to be them performing the reunion. That was originally a situation where all the Sephiroth's clones would go to the mountain and unite. But this is playing out differently, as we are aware.
Because we're not even, we just scratched the surface of the chat is like giving me a billion pieces of information. Here's a big one. The Kitase announcement, because this always...
Kitase announcement? Sharing messages from the development team. Oh, Kitase. Okay.
Always happens. The Final Fantasy VII Rebirth has been set on release for April 29th. The second installment remake project feature elements from the previous game, as well as greatly enhanced features such as the vast world map to explore and synergy abilities with party members. Before I even continue, it's starting to make sense why 16 and 7 Remake 2 are paired next to each other in terms of releases. It was always weird to me before 16 came out, where it's like, man, we're going to get these big zones in FF16. Wow. Isn't that what 7 Remake is going to be? Maybe one game is going to be that, one game isn't? And then ultimately...
I never thought about it that way. I didn't realize, in terms of, like, the spacing between titles, Final Fantasy 16 only just released, like, in August and July. And now we're getting Final Fantasy Rebirth, which really it does bring into question, because like it does feel it's a big project, right? We have Final Fantasy 16 as a new title for the franchise to go forward, and this is what we're playing before 17 is even then conceived. And at the same time, we've been aware that there is an entire game of Final Fantasy VII being released, where we're now getting into the sequel to that remake, and whatever happens in Rebirth will be finished within the final title. It's going to be a 3-part game, is what people have been announcing already. So for it to be continually stretched out and developed at the same time, it almost feels like 16 was the exercise to further enhance what they can push in Rebirth.
Ultimately, 16 came out and you realize, like, oh, there's not a lot of exploration to 16. You know, most of their zones are kind of like simple and basic. They're not open world at all. They're just like relatively simple zones. But
because when you think about it, like, at the same time, in Final Fantasy VII, the original game, you're exposed to the entire world. You're allowed to like explore everything up to a certain point, and as I've just talked about, I'm now thinking about, we won't be introduced to Cid yet, because once we get established with Cid, we are then allowed to use the airship, which then allows us more of the world to be further explored. For it to be considered a open world experience must mean there's so much more of the content to explore, especially when it comes to the mini games, when it comes to finding secrets, to finding some of the when we get introduced to the ultimate weapons, we are being able to like explore them as like additional bosses. Is the assumption? It makes sense to where like they've kept it from what he's saying. They kept 16 in such a small zone base that this is the game where we're going to see true Final Fantasy open world in comparison to 15, where that was a tease of what an open world could be. Because it is, yes, within an open zone, because it's within like this continent, but a true open world where we can go overseas, move to the next continent, and so forth is going to be really fun.
Focusing on combat stuff, right? So the question was like, oh, why are they going to have two games doing the same thing? That's weird. 16 obviously did not have that, right? It was going for something much different. So now it makes sense that like, hey, you want your big world to explore kind of thing? Actually, that's Rebirth.
Okay.
There's no more confusion anymore now that 16 is out. That is Rebirth. The story will unfold more dramatically than ever before with a rapid pace of major twists and turns. We know fans are dying to see one
particular scene. I'm what I really hope is that this one particular scene is either the dating scene that is memed up, or the infamous scene where Sephiroth, for this playthrough, is gonna come down from the balcony and pierce Aerith through the chest with Masamune, and dropping of the materia that would have helped save the world. Like, everybody and the grandparents and their mothers do not want to see that scene, because it was heart-wrenching the first time. To see this happen the second time is gonna be rough.
What? Shut up, Kitase. What? We know fans are dying to see one.
Don't it's calling the you shush your mouth. But like, again, it's really funny to where everybody knows it. Everybody knows that one particular scene, and we don't want that to happen. Like, it's scary.
Cute. Rebirth can be enjoyed on its own as a standalone adventure, with the party leaving Midgar to explore the wide world beyond. For those wishing to deepen their understanding of the story, a recap of the previous game will also be provided. We hope that both fans of those who have never played Final Fantasy before will enjoy this game.
Okay, so this will be fun. This will be great, because it's fun where they're giving this the same treatment. They're giving this a Final Fantasy treatment where it is a standalone game, much like how 16 is, and 14, 13, 15, 8, 9, the alphabet. But here, it's giving us a chance to really catch up in the same way how in Kingdom Hearts 3, we get to see a recap movie of the previous game, but you can still enjoy it within its own world.
Is there a part? There's a part 2? Oh, from Hamaguchi. This is the new lead director of the game. For anybody that doesn't know, Remake Part 1 was directed by Nomura and Naoki Hamaguchi. He was the co-director of Part 1. In FF7 Rebirth, Nomura is no longer the director of this game. He's obviously working on a ton of projects right now. So Naoki Hamaguchi, we have long been presuming that Hamaguchi was likely the lead director of FF7 Remake Part 1. It's just that Nomura's close association with the franchise, you know, was definitely there.
Because it makes sense where when Nomura wanted the inclusion of Nomura was a way for a quality check to make sure this is a direction that we want to go, I believe. And yes, this is different from the original game. Everybody knows it. Everybody and their mom knows it. So for you to want the exact...
So
God Gamer 6, you say we don't care? How dare you? We don't care as in we don't care about the number of... Oh, we don't care, just take your time. What do you mean by we don't care? Because you are a problem as it is. But for now, we know definitely that this game is going in a different direction from 97. This game is going to be this is a relative adaptation. This is basically another steak with more pizzazz. If you want the standard steak, there it's right over here. This is beyond.
So he's the creative director of Part 2, which is seemingly more of like an advisory role.
Just to make sure it goes smoothly, transitions accordingly.
And before. So to me it always felt like Part 1 feels a lot different than a typical Nomurian game outside of some elements for sure. It was always seemed like I felt like Hamaguchi probably has a pretty good feel of what's going on, and granted, I think that went so well that they gave him full control over Part 2, and now Nomura is too busy. The guy just is doing too much stuff.
That makes sense because like the game was left in such a great way where you are hungry for another game. With the way the first game was left off, it could have easily been that's it. That's what the game is. And if nobody liked, if there was no guarantee of a second game, that's fine. That's where the game ends. And if you want to see where the game leaves off, there's that other game. But for how successful this became, yes, this gives, with Nomura being so busy from what he's explaining, we're gonna see something wild because Nomura is busy. We're gonna see someone who is blessed with the opportunity to take the story that's been told before into a new direction. Oh,
so I'm fairly excited because this guy feels like he has a pretty good grasp on what people love about Final Fantasy VII. We're finally able to announce the release date for all of you. We've been working tirelessly on Rebirth since the release of VII Remake. They officially announced, chat, that this game was in development in October of 2019. Just as a confirmation, October 2019 was the first time they even uttered the word that we've begun development on even the next games.
Okay.
So it's been a while. And can't wait for you to experience our labor of love. In this title, Cloud and his friends will have fled Midgard, will be setting on an adventure across an expansive world on an unknown adventure in pursuit of Sephiroth. While the main storyline is bigger and more ambitious than the previous game's narrative, Rebirth embraces the concept of free exploration, while with compelling stories, good minigames, fun minigames, powerful monsters, and so much more to find throughout the world map.
From that alone, it's the concept of free exploration is a telltale that like we're still gonna stay within the continent of Midgard. So, and we won't get the airship quite yet. I don't believe this is where we get the airship. The airship is in the final game, but in terms of compelling stories, where I'm hoping it's gonna dance between Zack and Cloud, because when we were in that earlier scene that we saw Cloud and Sephiroth fighting together, if people don't know already, then they're gonna find out as it is. But with Cloud's after the events of Crisis Core Reunion, we know that Cloud is survived and Zack is passed away. We're running into a situation where Cloud's memories are so distrustful because his memories is mixed along with his experiences is mixed in with Zack's. So what we're going to be seeing is an actual cutscene to where, is it Cloud or is it actually just Zack's story that was told to Cloud? So to be Zack's living legacy, amidst the PTSD experience and traumatic experience, he might have just taken that up literally. So that's what he's done. But who's to say? Fun minigames like the Golden Saucer, powerful monsters, from the introduction of what could be an ultimate weapon, it might be an experience to where we're going to see more monsters to hunt for rewards. So that's going to be a fun experience we're going to dive into as well.
We hope you will explore this world in great detail, as nearly 100 hours of adventure awaits. You should just say 2 discs, right? I don't want this 100-hour bullshit. I want describe that to me in disc form. Discs are now a measure of time, at least for me personally. I measure time by discs. So give me the disc time. Well, wait, how many days do we have left till FF7 comes out, Chad? Rebirth? That is about 215 discs away. All right, good. We're good. 200 discs? That's not that far away. We can begin the countdown timer. How many discs are we away from FF7 Rebirth?
Because again, like that was a whole thing to where it's crazy how big this game is going to be. Because in the original release of Final Fantasy VII, it was in a big thick boy box with 3 different discs. And one disc alone gave you the experience of a 40-50 hour playthrough of one time and a 100-hour total playthrough or so of, what is it? Completion. The completionist did it under 100, maybe 100 hours, 120 hours. This 100-hour game is going to be crazy because at one point, where is the climax that the first disc will leave us? What is the climax? Because in knowledge of what the game is going to be, we don't know where the cutoff point will be when it'll tell us, please insert disc 2 or continue playing in the previous disc. It's hard to say. We don't know where that cutoff is going to be.
We hope you take this new Final Fantasy game experience in your hands to enjoy. Another thing I got to mention out here, because this is all very good news. A while back, Naoki Hamaguchi was interviewed, and I think has some pretty telling information about how the world of FF7 Rebirth might actually be. And I've said this many times before, and I have to remind everybody again. This dude loved Horizon. And whatever you feel about Horizon, its narrative, its characters, whatever, that doesn't really matter.
Horizon Zero Dawn? I like Horizon Zero Dawn. And we've only been playing for less than 5 minutes, and I'm talking so much. Dear God.
Matters specifically. You have to look at Horizon as like a game design, right? What do you do in the world of Horizon? Like, how do you engage with that game's environment? And I haven't played all of those games. I know Simmons has. And I know Simmons says the world and like the storytelling, the world storytelling in Horizon is really good. The problem with Horizon is when you eventually get into combat, and he describes it, you enter a world of Eurojank. And it's like, it sucks. So, again...
I don't know how to... I can agree where some things do suck, where there's like a sticky control, or the changing of combat between Zero Dawn and Forbidden West. There is it's a weird aftertaste where like, oh, there's so many flavors, there's so much world building by just looking at the landscape alone. But once you get into combat, it gets janky, it gets weird, it gets interesting in where it plays out, because you're you're living within the world, and you have to dodge roll it, and the animations are sometimes janky, and some assets can be stuck within others when it's bugged.
There's some things when you run around like the world of Horizon that's kind of like enjoyable and fun. Simmons really hates the combat in Horizon. He really doesn't like it. So ultimately, like, well, what if you have like a world like that, and you have the engagement of the combat of a 7 remake, right? Maybe that'll be a lot more fun. Mm-hmm. Again, I think there's ways that Horizon, in terms of an overall game design, I feel fit FF7's world pretty well. In terms of exploration, in terms of moving around the environment and going and engaging in places and getting into side quests and all that kind of stuff, right? Doesn't mean specifically how you engage and fight enemies. It mostly is, how do you engage an open world? Hamaguchi has said before he loves Horizon, and he loves the world of the game, and he loves like playing that game. So I'm very curious how that's going to translate to the open world narrative and the open world gameplay theory of FF7 Rebirth. How do you engage the environments? How do you engage the enemies? How do you engage side quests? How do you engage collectibles? Like, do you collect things, right? What do you do? If there was one thing that 16 taught us, is that they gave us a world that had nothing to do in it. You know, a whole bunch of maps that look really beautiful that were just there to run back and forth in.
Yeah, because if I understand it correctly, the difference between 16 and 15 is that you can go in any direction in 15, and you would just find things. You would just find monsters to fight, and you would go into combat. You would find dungeons and or tunnels to then go into for the other weapons for Noctis. But with how 16 is generated, it's pretty linear in terms of you go from A to B, and from my understanding, you go to A to B. There's patches to where you can discover things, but you get jumped into combat almost immediately, like a Devil May Cry game. So the blending of Devil May Cry in an open world was what it was dealing with, but who's to say?
And it's like, oh man, like these zones are really pretty, but there's just nothing to do in them. You run in and fight every single enemy, and that's all you really get. So that's what's like kind of worrisome, is that like they need to do things. Like we need to engage with the world in some way that is like different than that. And ultimately 15 did some things with that, but not great, right?
Yeah, because even traversal was really janky. And during my completion, you had to go out of your way to figure out, oh, how can I upgrade the car? I never got a flying car. You have to go out of your way to figure out context clues on how to find the other 13 weapons. I'd never had all the 13 weapons because if you completed the search for all the weapons, which there was no, like, you could have went into the final boss with Arden you could have only just done it with the story connected weapons. You could have done everything and fought the final boss with X number of weapons. But to get all 13 weapons to make the limit break more powerful, you had to go out of your way. You had to all of a sudden play Oregon Trail and find those additional weapons in order to get full powered Noctis. I finished the game, but it could have been much longer just to fully equip Noctis with all the summons and fight the adamantium turtle or everything. It did well in some places, but it didn't execute in as a good way because there was no urgency. It didn't feel as urgent as I thought it would be.
15, you can't even like really climb up mountains or anything, right? 15's a game that most of the environment you run across is flat land. You drive up to places, but you can't even jump on rocks and shit for the most part.
Because you'd be
stuck.
stuck.
How do you engage with this stuff? And already we see things in the trailer that is like, hey, Chocobo environmental Metroidvania shit. You see like, hey, like I see that I can go up here. And
you can get a black Chocobo to climb up. There's potentially hours invested in Chocobo farming and breeding. Maybe.
I'm going to bring my bird back to this area later on, and now my chicken can run up here because I have this chicken, or I have a new chicken that can fly over this thing because I have a new chicken, or I have the buggy because I can now go over this thing because I have a buggy, right? Like that's the kind of thing that is interesting. Because
you can travel the world in a buggy, and there's certain places where you can't go in the buggy. So you have a bird, and you can fly that pigeon and run that pigeon up and down places because it has the talons. So there's going to be a segue. You can segue from left to right in certain places, and just travel. But even the segue might be only within the confines of the Golden Saucer.
It's like, oh, now you're engaging with the world in a way that is multifaceted. Now you got to come back and new things happen. Not entirely Metroidvania-y, but still, there's things. So anyway, long story short, Hamaguchi really liked Horizon. And you have to start thinking of that. Like, how do you solve environmental puzzles with traversal? And I think we already saw that answered in the trailer. From Nomura-san. This is
Nomura, okay. Nomura is the final person to talk about it. The Study of Ancients might be a cutoff in the first disc. Third one will be released in 2027 on 30th anniversary. That'd be interesting.
It covers between the start of the journey outside Midgard to the midpoint of the original FF7. It feels like 7 Remake was an
the second title of a trilogy and covers between the start of a journey outside Midgard to the midpoint. What was the midpoint of 7?
Introduction to the world and a preparation for this journey. VII Rebirth serves as an illustration of the incidents that starts the journey, an exploration of the people tied to it and the journey itself, heading toward its climax. But many
Wait, hold on, wait. Serves as an illustration of the incidents that started the journey. The 7 plate dropping, meeting, escaping, like the death of the old president Shinra with the new president being initiated, the orphanage.
Many elements were carefully selected for this title because this is a series. We have the unique opportunity to review and incorporate feedback from the previous title, such as the increasing the number of characters.
Increasing the number of characters. Because during the trailer, we get introduced to Cat Sith as a playable character, Red 13 as a proper character to play as, and we get introduced to Vincent. Now, will the reveal of Vincent be towards the end of the second disc? Hard to say. We don't know. We still need to be then introduced to Sid. Sid is the person that is like provides the ride, provides the airship. But if they're going to introduce new characters in the same ways that they introduced Roche, like we get the assumption that somebody survived the plate falling, because one of the end credits includes looking out the window of the orphanage. So is it Jesse's everybody's favorite girl that left, or is it Biggs, Wedge? Biggs and Wedge might be a combo deal, but Jesse was never given tribute outside of the game. So maybe Jesse is the one that survived the fall. We don't know who else survived the fall in the 7 title. In this title, at least. Because in the original title, everybody died. Everybody. But here they're going to bring back new characters that are tied to it.
I am sure that the bar for the next work will be raised even higher, now that we have included so many spectacular elements in this work. But even so, the entire team continues to work diligently and without compromise on its development. There is also the looming question of what fate awaits, whether you have experienced the original or will embark on an adventure with fresh eyes. We hope you face the ending of this work on your own terms.
There is a looming question what fate awaits, because again, like with how the reunion is going to change, it might be a rebirth. We might be entering a new world now that their worlds are colliding between what if Zack lived, and what if because in the recent trailer in this trailer before this, we saw Barrett, Red 13, Tifa, everybody but Cloud was injured because he was slouched on the shoulder of Zack. And this is confusing. And then when we see that new girl, we see the girl with like the newsletter hat. I don't know where she fits into this gigantic like play, because allegedly she might have been a third interest. I don't know. But the fact that she is now being introduced with Zack, I don't know if she's going to question, hey, what's Cloud doing here? I just saw him a while ago with Tifa and Aerith, and now he is injured? What's going on? She's going to be crazy herself because she just saw Cloud not that long ago before the fall of the plate. Hard to say. There's a lot of looming questions because of, like, what the... You bitch. I am trying to live in the world of 7. Excuse me.
Interesting statement terms.
Well, we don't know how the game plays.
Statements there. To me, that comes across as like we're changing shit. There's some spooky language going on there. Maybe it's some translation shit. They're definitely trying to. So Kitase and Nomura are leaving a wafting Mako funk of mystery and unknowing. They're just continuing all the crazy gaslighting that's happening at the end of part 1, unknown adventure type stuff.
Yeah, because again, we don't know, because like at the end credits we saw Zack and Aerith like passing by each other. Like what does that mean? what does it mean that like Aerith is somehow aware that maybe Zack is alive? But she is not leaving the party just to find that out. No, she is with the party right now. But then what happens to the body of the Aerith that was put in the helicopter? Are they going to be clones? Because we're dealing with clones regarding Sephiroth. Who's the clone and who's actually a part of the plot? Because there's a lot of questions that Nomura and the other guy are doing.
There's a Mako funk that we're huffing right now, and we don't know exactly where they're going. Because we still don't know Zack's actual involvement.
Yeah, like how is Zack involved? Because Zack was a surprise because he was supposed to die. And for us to find out that, wait, Zack survived? Zack's lugging a Cloud's unconscious body? Because in the original title, in Crisis Core Reunion, we saw Cloud wake up at the end of the battle where Zack died. And then that's how the scene happened, and he is crying, and he's dragging himself back to Midgard. And then at some point between that dragging of self, he finds Tifa, he finds Barrett, and then he is working to be a mercenary before the events of the Final Fantasy proper.
To be real, we know that we get a pretty good idea that there's a couple of timelines, right? There's two separate timelines that are going to merge with the reunion at this point. But how Zack and his party members are involved, still don't know, brother.
Because if there's definitely gonna be a segment to where we're gonna see scenes switching back between them, because we just encountered a scene where Zack was carrying Cloud on his back, to seeing a scene of Zack handing off Cloud. So that itself is going to be one playthrough. Is he going to get his own party, and reunion's going to be him running into Cloud in the end to further mess up Cloud and further like pish posh with Sephiroth?
We're still kind of left in the dark. Yeah, the world will be saved, but will you?
Who's the royal you that they're talking about, though? Because we don't know which
will
you.
Be saved, but will you? They're talking about Aerith again.
But like, cause like Aerith is again in a situation where Aerith is acting out in a certain way that is separate from the timeline we're aware of,
leading to mystery.
There's mystery between Aerith as an ancient, and we don't know that she is an ancient yet, I believe. But there's a real mystery as to why Sephiroth is messing around this early in the franchise, along with Aerith insisting that she sell a flower to Cloud because she was really insistent, in the same way that the Spirit of Fate pushed her into the alley in the first game.
Up the fact that she's going to be savable. They're hyping that. They're hyping it up, man. Things are starting to make a bit more sense. Aerith or Zack? Yeah, good question.
Because it might be they might give us a choice on, hey, do you want to save Zack or do you want to save Aerith? Or do both have to die to maintain the timeline? Because if they both stay alive, things are gonna be unwound very quickly.
And that could actually mean several characters. I think the intention is that it's supposed to feel like it's Aerith, you know?
And they want to make your choice matter, but will it matter?